Hey, you. Yes, you. The one who feels like you are carrying the weight of an entire ocean of sorrow. Today, we are going to talk about something tough and something real. The raw emotions of grief. Not the kind that you see on an inspirational quote over a sunset. We are going to be talking about the messy, raw, and real emotions of grief. Welcome to the you in my trust system of my new book, Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to. U is for Unpack Emotions. So in the past 2 weeks, we've talked about the previous letters in my trust system that I talk about in my book, Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to. So the first T was tell your truths, and then the R was to reach out. So if you haven't watched those videos, you might want to go back, or you can go back after this video and watch those to kind of catch you up to speed. But today we are talking about the U in trust, and that is unpack emotions. And emotions are honestly really the heart of grief. They are by far the most difficult part, right?
So many feelings.
Oftentimes we get overwhelmed by our emotions. Sometimes we're not even sure what we're feeling, or we're scared that we're not feeling anything at all. The good news is that all of that is normal. So in this chapter, the U chapter of the book, I go into much greater detail about the different kinds of emotions that you experience in grief. And it is not always comfortable, and it's not always pretty, because I have you dig into what you are feeling and to really acknowledge what those emotions are, what is behind those emotions, and it might dig up some old wounds.
They do all these emotional things, make you feel all these emotional ways.
But I cannot stress enough how important that deep work is. Now, I can't get too in-depth in this video, or else it will be crazy long if I cover the whole chapter. So I'm just going to kind of skim through the main emotions that I talk about in this chapter in the book. We're going to think of our emotions like a suitcase, and we are going to unpack those suckers one by one. Let's get started. So the first thing I talk about in this chapter is the initial shock, where you are most likely feeling numb and overwhelmed. When grief first hits, it is like being thrown into an ice cold ocean. You are numb, and a lot of times you are just operating on autopilot. But in those early days, that shock is acting kind of like a protective shell around you, allowing you to feel just enough that you can feel and still be able to breathe. Eventually, though, that shock and that numbness is going to start to crack, and then the real pain is going to begin. One of the things that you might feel next is anger. Anger is the it's not fair. Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to my person? It is a natural response to feeling completely out of control.
I just feel so angry all the time.
Anger isn't pretty, and it might actually feel scary, but it is actually a really important part of the process. So if you are feeling angry, allow yourself to feel that. I just don't recommend punching walls, because that will hurt. So punch a pillow, don't punch a person, punch something inanimate and soft, and use it as a release for that anger. That is totally okay, and in fact, encouraged. The next emotion that I unpack is guilt. And guilt is often a whopper, and it is one that hangs around for a very long time. A lot of times when I meet people who are very still hung up on their grief after a long amount of time, guilt has a part to play in that. Guilt is a really tricky emotion because it is so irrational most of the time, but it is so convincing. We convince ourselves that we should have and could have done things differently or done more. We replay scenarios over and over, hoping that things could be different. But the problem with guilt is that things can't be different. And the only person you're hurting with your guilt is yourself. In my book, I talk about how it's really difficult to get the guilt to go away, but when it does, it is a huge step forward in your grief journey. In almost all cases, you need to let yourself off the hook And you need to realize that you did the best you could do with what you knew at the time. The next emotion that I cover is sadness or depression. These are the feelings that are in there for the long haul. They hunker down and settle in. And a lot of times they never really go away. For a long time, it is probably that deep, soul-crushing sadness that makes it difficult to get out of bed or to function. The sadness and depression are accompanied by exhaustion because it is so exhausting to feel so sad. And sometimes that sadness comes with an extra side of emptiness, where it feels like everything is just freaking pointless. It's essential to let yourself feel this sadness without judgment. And you might feel it for a really long time. And like I said, the sadness will probably never completely go away, but that is actually a good thing because the fact that you're sad is a testament to your love. One of the other feelings I touch on is fear. And this fear can take a lot of different forms. It can be fear of forgetting your person. It can be fear of moving on or moving forward. It can be fear that you're going to lose someone else in your life that you love. And I know I keep saying that it's natural and normal.
I mean, we're like totally like normal.
But I'm going to hit you over the head with it because, again, fear is natural and normal. You've faced one of your worst nightmares after all. The best thing you can do is acknowledge your fears, talk about them, write them down, shine a flashlight on those suckers. And eventually, hopefully over time, they will start to lose their power over you. Okay, so those are some of the feelings that I do a deep dive into in the book. But I also talk about some other things in the Unpack Your Emotions chapters. And one of those is grief tsunamis. This can be tsunami of all those different emotions that I just talked about, where you can be anywhere. You can be in the grocery store and you can see a product that your loved one loved, or this just happened to me the other day. You can have a song come on the radio in the store that reminds you of your person. It can be as simple as smelling a scent that reminds you of someone. There are a million different things that can trigger a grief tsunami. Grief tsunamis can be so frustrating because they seem to come out of nowhere. One minute you could be fine. The next minute you're bawling in the cereal aisle looking at the Cheerios. These waves of emotions of grief are unpredictable and frustrating and painful, but they are also a sign that you are processing your loss. So let them come and know that they will pass. I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm just going to quickly say that I also talk a lot about tears in this chapter and the different types of tears that you cry when you're grieving, or the fact that sometimes you can't cry at all, and that's also scary, but okay. And then lastly, I also talk about masking your emotions with drugs and alcohol and the danger that can come from that. And I also give my own personal stance on using medication to help deal with your emotions. Unpacking your emotions in grief is never just a one-time deal. It is more like a continuous process of sorting through that suitcase, but never fully emptying it. Navigating grief is so complex and it is so completely personal. So I just want to reiterate, there is no set timeline. There is no order to these emotions. You can feel different emotions at totally different times as someone else who's grieving the same loss. I myself have gone back and forth with all kinds of different emotions. Even though I'm in my third year out from my loss at this point, I still find myself feeling angry. I still find myself feeling guilt. I definitely still have grief tsunamis. In fact, my grief tsunamis are worse now in the third year than they probably were in the second year. But the key is I know that it's okay because I am processing. I am allowing those emotions to come. I'm feeling them and I'm working through them. Remember, it is okay to seek help. It is actually great if you have someone with whom you can talk about those emotions, because the more you get them out, the better. Most importantly, just be kind to yourself. You are doing the best that you can, and that's enough. So for anyone walking this path, like I always say, you are not alone. We are on this messy journey together. And while the pain and the crazy emotions may never fully disappear, they will evolve, and so will you. If you'd like to go more in depth into any of these topics, like I said, I talk about them in my book, Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to. I also have a wealth of videos. I go through most of the emotions and talk about grief tsunamis in previous videos, so you can always go back and search through my YouTube video catalog. And hopefully you can find something that can help you with whatever you're looking for. So I am curious, what emotion is hitting you the hardest right now in your grief journey? Comment below and let everyone know so that we all share with each other and see that these crazy emotions are a normal thing for all of us. All right, so we have covered tell your truths, reach out, unpack emotions. Next week, we're going to be talking about the S in the trust system, and that is search for meaning. So join me for that one next week. I'll see you guys later. Sending love and hugs as always.